Hey, Anthony, new year. I can't believe it. I'll be honest with you. It feels like we didn't have any time off at all. How are you?
How was your Hanukkah?
I assume it was great. How about your Christmas?
It was amazing. I will tell you something that I apologize for stealing the first day of Hanukkah.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It was due to come. It was due to happen. I was very excited, or I will be excited, or something. And honestly, Anthony, I don't know if I'm coming at you from the future or we're coming from the past. I don't know what's happening. What do you think is happening over here?
I think that you can't keep secrets. That's what I think.
All right, here's what the deal is. Got a great year of shows ahead of you, but we wanted to take a real break, and I happen to have a speaking gig this day, January 7th, 2025. So we recorded this at the very end of 2024. We got a great guest for you today to kick off the year, Daniel Lesser. You all know him as co-founder, president, CEO, LW Hospitality Advisors. Daniel, great to see you, man.
Great to see you too, both of you.
So excited to have you here. Anthony, go for it.
I was just going to say, so Dan, you're our first guest of 2025. So you're going to get all the future prediction questions.
That's right.
So let me start with an easy one. Predict the future. Go.
Predict the future. No matter how bad it is, we'll all survive, right? Pre-election, there was a lot of doom and gloom, right? And not going to get into politics.
Nope.
At the end of the day, things are just fine. It's always the case.
Well, January 7th, we don't know if the government was shut down, so we'll hopefully not be shut down this weekend.
I'm sure that they will be up and running. And just so you guys know, as a reference point, it's December 20th as we are recording this, but you're watching it January 7th. Dan, when the last time you were here, one of the takeaways I got from you is you were bullish, not today, not tomorrow, but eventually for big urban comebacks, particularly in places like San Francisco. Seems unlikely. You still feeling like within the next 5 to 7 years or so that we're gonna see some real engines of growth behind that market?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, if you look at some of the office building trades that have occurred in San Francisco at fractions of replacement cost and fractions of what they previously sold for, there's some smart, sophisticated money betting on San Francisco office. There's also a bit of smart, sophisticated money betting on San Francisco hotel. And pretty soon we're going to see some trades with, Highgate just returned the keys, I think, on the Hyatt Regency by the Convention Center.
Right.
The two big park hotels.
Right.
Something's going to happen with those. They're on the market for sale. I'm sure that when they do ultimately trade, they're going to be at fractions of replacement cost. Now, I have heard that one of those two park hotels may be converted to residential. But listen, long term, I'm a firm believer that San Francisco is a world-class city. It's a beautiful city. It's a gateway to Asia. And, unless you think it's going to literally fall into the Pacific Ocean, I don't see how it doesn't come back. Now, it's going to take a long time for that happen. Right. And the last thing I'll say is look at New York City. Right. It was only 4.5 years ago, during the depths of COVID, New York was written off. It was done, finished, never coming back. And look what's going on in the city today.
Yeah, but New York's an enigma, and it's the center of everything. And when that Comedy Store owner said New York is done, and Jerry Seinfeld came over and basically gave him a virtual slap in the head and said, "Are you out of your mind?" I couldn't agree with him more. New York, I think, is an enigma. San Francisco, I think, also will come back, but I think it's a little bit different. What you know better than me is from a real estate standpoint. But in reference to San Francisco, when you say you hand the keys back to the bank, I've heard that several times. So how many hotels did people just hand the keys back to the bank?
In San Francisco?
Yeah.
Quite a number. I believe the Four Seasons went back to the lender.
Yeah.
The two park hotels, there are a number that went back to the lender. And I'm not so sure that phenomenon is over.
Right.
Something else to think about. It was not that long ago, candidly, pre-COVID, when San Francisco was a darling hotel market for years and years. Great fundamentals, really difficult to build.
Yeah.
I don't see how it doesn't change.
I think it's coming back. It's definitely coming back. It is absolutely coming back. But I think New York, it's almost, the wind just died down, but the wind is always there. New York is, again, I was in New York last night. We went to see Andre Bocelli at Madison Square Garden. Went to my friend Joe Isidori's great restaurant, Arthur's and Sons, which if you haven't been, you got to go. And New York was insane. It was absolutely, it was busier than the busiest year I remember in New York.
Wow.
You know, at the right basis, investment basis, everything makes sense. And again, you're going to see some trades in San Francisco at probably shockingly low numbers on a per key basis. But again, hold on if need be for 10 years, and I don't think you could lose.
Yeah, and the Mandarin Oriental in New York City, that also went for a steal during COVID, correct?
I believe that was a partial interest that sold.
Okay. But I know there was a couple
and at like a record per key, if I recall.
If you grossed it up to 100% ownership, yes, correct.
Yeah.
What was that? It was a record per key?
Yeah, on a percentage basis because it wasn't full purchase. But yeah.
But,
Actually, I think the Baccarat at over $2 million a key still may be the high watermark, but I'm not 100%.
You might be right about that. All right, so everybody just kind of take everything we're saying with a grain of salt because we don't have any notes in front of us.
There's a hotel that just opened, and I won't mention it. 153 room hotel somewhere in America. That I just did the calculation, and it went for $2 million a key, and it's not in New York market. So I'm very curious to see how that hotel does.
Daniel, how are you feeling about Southern California?
I feel great about Southern California. Why do you ask?
Not for vacation.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what you think about the market down there. You know, California is just so big a part of our country. We talked about Northern California with San Francisco. I thought I'd hear what you have to think about the other part.
I like Southern California as well. They're not feeling the fundamental challenges that San Francisco is feeling, or at least the downtown core. And again, you know, development in California is not an easy process. So for the most part, supply is in check. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as long as demand remains strong, the supply-demand equation works.
Yeah. So earlier in the last week, we did shows of the year. We had on Clark Hanratty. He is a partner over at HEI Hotels and Resorts. For those of you who want to go back and look, two things. They did a lot of investments in urban locations. So, you know, confirming what you're saying over here. But also his predictions for this year was it looks like deals are going to really get better than they have been in the last couple of years. I see you nodding, so I'm going to guess you agree. Why do you agree, and how do you see it?
So when you say better, I'm assuming in terms of
more transactions occurring within the marketplace.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Several reasons. Listen, there's still interest rate pressures. There's no doubt about it, in spite of the fact that there have been several cuts, and it was just announced that there will only be maybe 2 more cuts. But that is favorable for the cost of capital to invest in commercial real estate, including hotels. Let's face it, there's no shortage of maturities of debt that's coming due. Maturities of debt that originated 3, 5, 7 years ago, and it's going to be a challenge for these existing owners because interest rates are much higher today than they were just a couple of years ago. So that's a challenge.
Right. So they have to renegotiate the deals, and it'll come in at a higher percentage basis on average, is what you said.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
And then add on top of that, there's no shortage of hotels in this country that are capital starved. Right. The can was kicked down the road fairly significantly vis-a-vis required renovations and PIPs, product improvement programs.
Right.
The brands are done playing nicely in the sandbox. These renovations need to get done. So you're going to see a lot of sponsors say, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to cut my losses. I'm getting out of this and putting it up for sale. So you will see a fair amount of sale transaction. We're also going to see a fair amount of refinancing transactions because of all this maturity of debt coming due.
Right.
And do you think the tailwinds of rate decompression, you know, do you think having the rates, I think the first quarter, second quarter, you're going to start seeing rates maybe not hit the budgets that people are thinking. Do you think that's going to play? In people wanting to
listen, the statistics are clearly showing that occupancy has peaked out. We're not going to see a whole lot more room in occupancy. The only growth we're going to see, and very modest at best for the near term, is average daily rate.
Right.
whether budgets end up being aggressive and then not achieved, it really depends on who's putting the budget.
Well, I think that's what happened in 2000. And I think that's what happened this year. The budgets were significantly increased over last year, and last year was a great year. And I think this year, most people are between 4 and 5% RevPAR growth, which I still think is going to be a little challenging, in my personal opinion. Unless you're in specific markets. The Boston market's on fire.
It depends on the property and obviously the market and candidly sub-market, right? When we talk about New York City is a huge market with a lot of sub-markets. So the hotel industry.
I mean, 42nd Street is different than Staten Island. Yeah.
You think? It's so funny.
People out there understand very clearly.
Yeah. And even so, if we can diverge for a second, when you look at Long Island City, and that was going to be the darling of the hotel business 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. As they say in my country, what happened?
I mean, New York, Long Island City, and no different than Northern Jersey, is benefiting from the peak overflow from Manhattan.
Yeah,
there's no question about it. And candidly, the view from Long Island City is much better than the view from the east side of Manhattan.
100%.
Yeah, we just had somebody on talking about I guess it was Clark talking about the Hyatt Regency Jersey City that they're owners of, and that is like one of the best views ever. You see all of downtown Manhattan.
Exactly.
Yeah, the W there, or the W there. I used to go there every vacation during the holidays, and beautiful views. But a lot of those hotels turned over, right? I didn't really have kept up with that market. A lot of those hotels turned over, correct?
Which ones?
In Long Island City?
You've had a number of them sell, yes. Yeah. By the way, I'd like to go back a second. You vacation in Jersey City?
Yeah, okay. So on Black Friday, I take my kids and my nieces and nephews for 18 years. Now they're all adults. On Black Friday, I get all 6 kids, since they're 5 years old, by myself, and I take them wherever I want. So I found that they loved Hoboken. So a couple of years we went to the W Hoboken, and it was one of their favorite places because they loved just walking around Hoboken. So yeah.
Okay.
Just one Black Friday, and that's a beautiful hotel. So and they like the spa there. So
yeah, I'm taking my kids to the Smithtown Motor Inn for the holidays. So.
That's not nice, Glenn. Hey, I will also tell you, I took my kids to the New York Palace, and we stayed in the presidential suite at the New York Palace.
That's
awesome. We had access to their house car. So I upgrade from time to time.
Yeah,
for them.
Yeah. It's well, my family's not here right now, so it's like I get all these great upgrades, and then when I travel with them, we stay at the regular hotels, stuff like that. All right, so Dan, where do you think the biggest opportunity is for operators this year? You talked about it's getting harder to push rate, so where do you think they are going to be able to find some gains?
Candidly, technology. And
right.
The hotel industry has always been not a little, behind the curve and very reactive.
Hey, listen, I just got a fax from a major hotel brand that said differently. So I don't believe it.
That was good, Glenn. That was good. 2025 is good for you.
I believe that COVID finally changed that paradigm.
100%.
And the difficulty in finding labor has allowed the sector to embrace technology and be very forward thinking, and not so reactive, but more proactive in figuring out what are ways that operators can embrace technology to operate more efficiently.
Yeah,
and I think we'll see more and more of that as time goes on.
The compliance and the reporting up is so much more complicated, and everybody wants numbers quickly and efficiently. And if you're not really programmed into technology, you can't really give your asset manager, your ownership, the numbers they need at the level they need it, and speak to them on a granular level instantly. And whether it be revenue management or P&Ls or balance sheets or cash flow, if you don't have the right technology behind the scenes, not only for a guest, but behind the scenes in accounting and front desk. And if those systems don't talk to each other, which most of them don't, it's a cluster. And there's a brand, which I will not mention, has been promising a complete change of their systems for now. I've been in this industry 227 years. They've been saying 228 years they'll be changing the technology, and I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting when you look at technology and you consider back during the great financial crisis, call it 2008, when the hotel industry was, suffering some pain, and the advent of online travel agencies, OTAs, came around at the same time. And the sector thought it was the greatest thing since Swiss cheese and embraced it wholeheartedly, only to figure out several years later
that the cheese had a lot of holes in it.
What do we do here? We gave up control of our most precious commodity, heads and beds. And there's been that struggle ever since to get back control of the guest. The lodging industry has been pretty successful with book direct campaigns. And that's just an example in my mind of being reactive as opposed to proactive.
Yeah, and as soon as we realized how bad it was, I've said this before, we brought a knife to a gunfight. And
exactly.
And I remember, do you remember Andy Pells, I believe his name was, from Hotels.com?
Yes.
Okay. I remember it was like literally the beginning of Hotels.com. And I told him, I threw him out of my car on 9th Avenue. And I said, dude, I get better rates from the Mafia. It was crazy. I remember it was like I even got shares of stock. That's how early on it was pre IPO. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, we're out of our minds. However, we started taking marketing costs off of our, marketing plans, but we forgot that then we had to put expenses back on the P&L, marketing expenses, and they got expensive. And we all remember when the brands kind of shut down the OTAs, one brand in particular, and that was really difficult for everyone, for owners, for the brand. That was really, really tough. And I don't know if we really made any improvement after that shutdown.
Well, do you remember when the industry collaborated to come up with, I think it was called Room Key?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge failure. Mm-hmm. I mean, in a way, that's a little embarrassing, right? That the hotel industry couldn't figure that out back then.
Well, I think in the hotel industry, and again, you know better than everyone, there's just too many people involved. There's too many partners. There's too many challenges. Like, am I really going to play nice in the sandbox? I have 10 hotels in New York and you have 10 hotels in New York. We're street fighting every day. Are we really going to sit down at the table and say, one bean for you, one bean for me? It doesn't work that way. Not in New York anyway.
Anthony brings the gun instead of the knife.
Yeah.
I take the cannolis. I leave the gun.
Yeah, so a little dose of.
Talking about cannolis, Artisan Sons in New York City has the best cannoli I've ever had, and that's coming from an Italian that used to work in a cannoli shop.
Where they located?
There's two. There's one actually in one of Mr. Bourne's hotels, the Pod Hotel in Murray Hill, and that just opened. I was there last night. It was wonderful. And then the one downtown in West Village that opened a couple of years ago that has an adjacent restaurant as well, which is more casual. And there's one in the Hamptons and more to come. It's the hottest concept in New York City.
I was just thinking that when I was at the concerts at the end of the year, I was going to go there.
Actually, let me know. I'll get you the seat in the back of the kitchen.
Were those the Fish concerts that you went to in Las Vegas at the Sphere?
Correct. These are the Madison Square Garden shows for the holiday.
I talked to the doctors in Vegas, and they said Glenn almost didn't make it home.
I did though. We'll tell you the hardest thing I had to do this year, travel wise, was make a 7 a.m. flight after 4 Fish shows at Sphere. That was not pleasant.
Dan, I went to a half a Fish show at Madison Square Garden, and I really did enjoy myself, and I really said this was a great experience that I never need to do again. And I left. I left an intermission. I told them I was going to leave an intermission, but it was really something great. But it was one of those things. It's like, some people beer drinkers, some people scotch drinkers, some people like champagne, some people like wine. I am definitely not a fish drinker.
I like it all, which is why I like that. But Dan, let's get back to the real stuff, the hospitality business, the things that people really care about.
I think they care about us just talking. So before we get to that, all right, I'll let you ask a question. Then I got another question.
Go for it. I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah,
you guys are hilarious. I must say.
My resolution for 2025 was just to give up, so it's perfect. Yeah.
No, it's the opposite. 2025. So, Dan, you've been doing this a second or two. Biggest change that you've seen? Is there any change you saw this year that took 40 years to change? One of the things you said is technology. Is there anything else that for some reason 2024 you started to see a shift that you hadn't seen in many, many years, and it was finally it's time to come? Anything like that? I know it's a difficult question, but
my immediate reaction is continued expansion of hotel brand companies and getting into arenas that I think not that long ago you would have scratched your head, whether it be yachts, whether Marriott's recent announcement on the outdoor lodging brands that they just picked up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the evolution of hotel brand companies or hotel companies becoming branding companies and reservation outlets as opposed to operators. That's an interesting phenomenon.
I'm going to ask that question, and because I thought of it a second before I asked it, and your answer was so wonderful and really kind of opened my mind as soon as you said it, and that's why you're Dan the Man.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting when you.
Well, I say lesser is more, but you know, whatever.
What were you going to say, Dan?
When you look back over time, it's interesting. I had this conversation with somebody recently. It wasn't that long ago that, Marriott was Marriott, right? And Sheraton was Sheraton. And to think today that Sheraton is by Marriott, right?
Yep.
And I think that's very illustrative of, how hotel companies have morphed into what I alluded to earlier, branding platforms and getting their tentacles into other arenas. Here's something that I scratch my head in wondering why it hasn't happened yet, and that is new Class A office buildings that are being developed today. Look at One Vanderbilt in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. You walk into that place and you feel like you're in a hotel. It's very hospitable to come into that office building and be in that office building. I think there's tremendous opportunity for the lodging sector to get into management of office buildings. I mean, who knows better how to provide hospitality than hotel companies?
I think you just predicted 2026.
There you go.
Yeah. And something I saw something not too long ago, and the difference between a logo and a brand, right? And I think to your point, hotel companies are becoming less about their logo and more about their brand. What do I mean? If I said to you, Hyatt Hotels or any hotel, Marriott Hotel, are building a car company, you wouldn't know what that means. What is that? If I said to you, Versace's building a hotel, you would know what that means. You would instantly say, oh my God, of course, right? They're competing against the Four Seasons. They're competing against the 5 stars. Immediately you know that. And I think to your point, brand or hotel companies are becoming more influential in not lifestyle in the sense of what we knew 10 years ago, lifestyle, but real lifestyle. When you look at a Margaritaville, you look at a Hard Rock, that's real lifestyle. They really have an identity. And I think these brands are starting to find their identity, meaning they're more than a hotel company, that they are cooler. I remember when I was working with Nickelodeon and you saw Mr. Marriott, one day he was with us with SpongeBob standing next to Mr. Miller, who owned Miller Global. And then the next day, he was standing next to Ian Schrager building the public hotels. All within 24 hours, he literally started separating the old Marriott to the new Marriott.
I would expand what you said and add, even though it's overused, this term, but experiences, right? That's what everybody wants these days, experiences. And so the brands have evolved into providing experiential offerings. I also would like to go back to what you said about some of these retailers that are getting into the hotel space. Mm-hmm. Retailers, and now you have Jose Andres getting into the hotel space. It is kind of interesting how you're getting outside brands that have nothing to do with the hospitality industry getting into it, or at least attempting to get into it, which candidly, I'm not sure that the world needs more hotel brands. Actually, I know the world does not need more hotel brands.
Well, I think the world doesn't need more hotel brands, but it needs more owners of hotels brands. Meaning, how many brands can one company own? You know,
Ask Tony
you know,
Capuano.
It's like you look at the Graduate hotels, and the day they opened, me and Glenn talked about they're going to be acquired relatively quickly because they did such a beautiful job, and now they're within a brand. And the one thing I think we have going for us, and nobody talks about it, but I'm going to talk about it, is now that there's a new generation coming up, they travel the way we talk about our customers traveling, right? So the older guys like us and girls, we're like, well, the young generation travels like this and they travel like that. Well, guess what? The young generation is now running the companies. And I see that to be a positive in the sense of there's no longer, well, what does the customer want? Well, I am the customer, kind of like when we were growing up. We know what we wanted when we traveled, as business people.
Anthony, I found an incredible disconnect between people in the hotel industry and saying and understanding how they experience hotels versus the products that they oversee. There's too much of a schism there still.
I'm sorry, Glenn.
Yeah, but I will say, Anthony, you bring up a great point, younger generation. So, Daniel, I got to ask you, what brands do you think fundamentally understand Gen Z, and why do you think they understand?
I think I know what you're going to say.
I mean, Anthony mentioned Graduate, and another brand that sort of came to mind immediately was Yotel.
Yeah.
Anthony, what was I going to say?
Well, I thought you were going to say Hilton in reference to a big brand because they really, becoming number one, and we try not to take sides here on the show, and we're not taking sides, but we're just saying a fact. To be rated the number one place to work in the world, that's saying something. You're building your brand. So if you said to me, Hilton's opening up, a car company, I will tell you it would be user-friendly, it would be fun, and it would be creative. Simply because you cannot be the number one place to work on earth, that hotel company, period, without having a good, fun kind of environment, light environment that's also very serious about their business. So, so I would think, to answer Glenn's question, that's the first one that would come to mind for me. But yeah, and Yotel's a very interesting brand too, right? Because they opened up in New York with the big robot in their lobby. And I thought that was going to be, 50 hotels within a couple of years. And how many hotels are there?
Not that many.
11?
But think about Citizen M. Right?
I was going to say Citizen M next.
There you go.
They've done a really great job at expanding. That's for sure.
Yeah, and again, getting to that point, it's like I know a person that does tremendous amount of work with them from a third party vendor, and they say they're their favorite people to work with. That person, who's a very difficult person to work for, very intense. I always say, and she's a good friend of mine, I always say she's halfway out of her mind, and she said she loves working with them. Because they're fun, but they're serious about their business. And, I think that's kind of where we need to be always. We need to laugh, but we also need to make sure that we're driving the bottom line.
That's how I feel about Stay Pineapple. We have Dina Bell on, the president of Stay Pineapple, on as the show is running, I think, next week. So that'll be a good one to tune in for, because she's perfect like that. Daniel?
I like AC by Marriott for I think younger folks really appreciate it. In my mind, that's sort of the latest version of what Courtyard was 30 years ago. I think it's a great product, and I know a lot of young professionals who like staying at AC's by Marriott.
It's funny you say that. I work with Cohen out of Boston. They have lots of ACs, and they were kind of one of the starters of the AC brand. And I love staying at their hotels for a number of reasons. One, when you walk in, it's a 4-star hotel. It's luxury. It feels great, but it doesn't have all the heaviness that people don't want today. They don't have 3 restaurants and 3 jazz clubs and 17 things, and they just have really efficient spaces. They have great rooms, and it feels like a stylish hotel. It's one of my favorite brands. Really is.
Yeah.
And they have a great breakfast.
All right. Now I feel like I got to go and stay at one of these.
No,
brands.
Dan's 100% right. So coming into this industry today, what do you wish you would have known that you didn't know day one coming into the industry?
Coming into this industry today, well, I did a stint in operations and figured out fairly quickly that I love the hotel business, but I did not want to make a career in operations after doing some time actually at the New York Hilton Hotel.
Oh, cool.
I think a lot of young folks who come into the sector realize that sooner than I did today. But it's important to still have some operational experience. I believe it's a differentiator, right? It's one thing to play in the lodging sector, whether you do what I do, brokerage, finance, what have you. Hotels are unique animals. There's no question about it. They're very different forms of commercial real estate. The mere fact that you don't have long-term creditworthy tenancies, but rather you're leasing up guest rooms every single night. It's a complicated business. And then think about food and beverage, and you have a lot of different revenue streams, a lot of different expense costs to departments to deal with. And in my mind, to really be an expert in the sector, you do need operational experience.
Yeah, and I'll go one step. Further. It's mandatory, because I was talking to an owner the other day, and he's a great owner. And one of the reasons he's a great owner, because he understands at 7:00 in the morning, when the housekeeper doesn't show up and the general manager of a limited service hotel or gets the call, and they may have to come in and clean sheets. They may have to fold towels. We as operators fall in love with the building like we fall in love with people. It's an emotional connection for us as operators. And I experienced this my own when I started on the other side of the business as well, that how dare you sell this hotel? I remember when they sold the Plaza, I almost had a heart attack, or the Algonquin. It's like, how dare you? This is like something that you should, this is vital. And like this is something you should honor. Like, how do you sell a hotel? Until I got on the other side and realized, oh, okay, this is on the balance sheet, and this is when it makes this much money. Now it goes. So, but if you don't understand the emotion of the people in the building, how much it means to them and how hard it is to do what they do, when you're making big decisions that affect these hotels and affect these companies, you're really cutting your nose off to spite your face. So I can't agree with you more. You need both.
I would agree with what you said, understanding the emotion of guests. But when owners and sponsors start getting emotional about real estate that they own, that could be fraught with danger.
Yeah, absolutely. But you don't know that as an operator, right? As an operator, you think that they're sitting there crying over how beautiful their building is. You don't know that. And I always said this, and I said it yesterday on the show, I never focused on guests. Never. I focused on employees. And all of a sudden, I always had the best hotels in my market or in my city, because I focus on my employees, because I understand what they put into these hotels and what it means for them, and what a Christmas party means, what recognizing their birthday means, and then when I got on the other side, I became a little bit more impatient to the operation. And then I found a balance, because it's two different mindsets.
100%.
Daniel, before we wrap up, what hotel opening are you looking most forward to in 2025?
The Waldorf Astoria in New York.
I cannot wait.
Didn't take me too long to answer that question.
I was at the closing party of the Waldorf Astoria, and I'll tell you something. I shed a tear that day. I was like, man, I just hope this opens up.
And it's been so long. So long, I don't even remember when it closed. It's got to be 7 or 8 years already.
It's 8 years ago.
I was thinking 7. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
And I cannot wait, man. The Plaza closing was tough, but the Waldorf, there's something about the name, the Waldorf, and it's synonymous with the hotel business. Like, you use Q-tips for, cotton swabs. You can say the Waldorf, and like the Waldorf can be synonymous with, instead of saying hotel, you say hotel. You say Waldorf. I can't wait till it opens. I need to be there the day it opens.
Yeah, I hope we get invites. Hello, Hilton friends. Also, I'm really looking forward to the opening of the Vi Resort in Phoenix area in Glendale, Arizona. That's going to be pretty cool. For those of you who don't remember, check out our show on the Vi Resort. It's a great resort built around a performance center, and there's going to be a Mattel theme park over there as well. And I happened to be down there for a job for a hotel company a couple of months ago, and noticed it's right by a big casino resort and right where the Phoenix football team plays and all of that kind of stuff.
I hope we're there for opening.
I do too. I'm sure they're gonna have great bands playing there too. Really excited. Daniel, anything else you want to add before we wrap up for the day?
Happy holidays.
Well, the holidays are over. You got to wish happy back to work.
Happy back to work. All right. Although you did acknowledge that we're recording this on December 20th.
We are, but we'll be broadcasting this on the 7th. So
Happy New Year.
You guys really
Happy New Year.
Listen, when I was filming television, we filmed, we didn't do it live, but we didn't talk about not being live.
I didn't bring it up.
Well, when you have the show called No Vacancy Live, sometimes it helps to explain what's going on, particularly for the first show of the year. Daniel, thank you so much for being here, man. Really appreciate you. Just hang out for a second if you don't mind. Hey, Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks so much. And you know what? I think your resolution be follow us online, wherever your social channels are. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course, subscribe to us at novacancynews.com. Just text the word hotel to 66866. Thanks so much for being here. We look forward to having an amazing 2025 with you. And remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
be kind to yourself.
See you later.